Greetings and welcome to Second Breakfast, the second most important meal of the day. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jason. Sean, what are we having for second breakfast today?
Well, today for Second Breakfast, we are talking about episode 5 of the Amazon original series, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. This episode was titled Partings, directed by Wayne Chi Yip and written by Justin Dobble. Before we give our thoughts on the episode, I do want to read off some thoughts from people in the Discord. You guys can join the Discord server. The link is in the episode description. But some people in the Discord were recording this a little bit later than we normally do, so they had time to actually give their thoughts on the episode. So I wanted to read off from Egg of Dog. He just said, good episode. So, there we go.
Dude,
Great,
hell yeah.
great feedback, Egg. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks,
lot
Egg.
to chew on there. We had Chet Zale, who said, I think this week's episode might have been my favorite, but I'm starting to get bothered how the multiple storylines are all over the place in terms of tone. So going back and forth from them feels awkward. The Harfoot song was awesome, though. And I think we'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the tone and just the transitions in this episode are not up to the par of the other episodes, which is why I would say I think this episode is like an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I don't think that it's terrible. There's some like weird things with like lore that change and stuff, but I think more just like the literal, okay, this is when they're choosing to cut and this is how they're choosing to cut or like transition from one storyline to the other. It feels a little bit more haphazard, or it's like as if there had been more iterations of this episode than maybe the other episodes, and so it kind of got a bit like murky, you know what I mean? Like it's not as, or it's the opposite way where they didn't have as much time to work on this episode because they felt like it was more of like a filler one. Not that I feel like it's super filler, but maybe it's just one that they didn't really get to work on as much as the other ones. I don't know. I'm more just like hypothesizing about it because it's more. We'll talk about it more later, but it just feels a little bit more sloppy or has haphazard. Especially when comparing it to the other episodes. I still think it's really... That's why I still give it an 8. I still think it's really good, especially for other TV shows. Like, if you were to compare it, I still think it's pretty good. But for comparing it to the other episodes, I think it actually does come down a peg from 9. But I am glad, there's people say it's their favorite episode. I still think it was a good episode.
Yeah, I want to really quickly... I'm going to read Swarls' comment as well, and then I'm going to... I'll say what I thought. But Swarls said... I just think this episode is a blip. We can't have absolute bangers every time. It was a 7, maybe 7.5, and I'm good with it as long as all this makes more sense in time. Also, Jordan is my favorite. When he is talking with Elrond and goes to be on the rock was such a... When he's talking with Elrond and goes to be on the rock was such a minute thing, but just speaks about dwarves and their connection to the rock and stone. Keck W. Rock and stone.
Rock and stone.
I think Swarls is talking about his speech about how they mined the table or whatever. The stone that was made on the table.
I think what he's referencing is the scene where Elrond tells him that all the fate of the elves.
Oh, and he stands on the rock. Okay, I get what he's saying.
He steps up onto the rock and he says, "Give me the meat and give it to me raw." Like,
what a great line. He also says, because I wrote it down before that, he says, "Enough with the quail sauce."
Yeah.
I'm probably closer to Swarls. I think this is a 7, maybe 7.5 episode for me.
Okay.
I actually think if this was a different show, it would be an 8 for me. But because I think all the other episodes have been like 9s and 10s, I think this episode, this is the first time where I was watching the show and I actively was like, okay, let's cut away. I want to see something else. Like, there was a couple storylines here that we're going to talk about, but we're going to talk about them towards the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I have more to say about them, where I really wasn't vibing with like some story decisions that were being made and who we were deciding on spending so much time with. And I was just kind of like, okay, let's get to somebody else. Like, we don't need to be spending this time doing this. And that's kind of how I felt about it. So I do want to double back on what Chetzel was saying, because there was some discussion as well in the Discord, which again, link in the description, about tone of the show and about specifically the Harfoot tone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you had some thoughts on that you wanted to share on the podcast. So I'll cede the floor to you.
Yeah, so I had some discussions with some of the people in the Discord. Specifically, Inertia was somebody I talked a lot with in the Discord. And it was cool to see, just people talking in the Discord about the show. I love talking about the show. Obviously, we have the podcast,
Yeah,
but
yeah. In the Discord, how many times can we say Discord? How many times
yes,
can you,
yeah, right.
join the Discord?
Join the Discord, yeah. um, but what I like about the Harfoots, because I remember before the show came out, I feel like the consensus was that everyone thought the Harfoots was just going to be a happy-go-lucky thing where,
Mhm.
oh, we'll just cut to the funny little things the Harfoots are doing in order to kind of be a palate cleanser to all the deep, dark, terrible things happening in the rest of Middle Earth, right? But I do like how that has kind of changed, even in the first episodes where there's not really a lot going on, right? Like the things that are happening feel like they're of very little consequence. Like, yeah, the meteor part or whatever is crazy, but then even after that, it doesn't feel like it's of huge consequence, right? Like there's just the well, and before as well, like they're just picking berries and stuff, and oh, there's a wolf, oh my gosh, and like it doesn't feel like there's like a whole lot like it's not it is more happy-go-lucky, right? And I like that they use other parts of the episodes in order to make it feel more creepy. I remember there's a scene in, I think it was episode 2, maybe 3, where some really like evil stuff was happening, and then it cuts to the woods
Yes, yes, that was a
where
great scene.
the Harfoots are skipping through, but they're dressed up for the festival. And you're
Mhm.
like, are these orcs? Like,
Yeah,
because of
yeah.
the tone that they set, you are thinking something evil's about to happen, but it's really just their festival, right? And it turns into the nobody goes off trail and nobody walks alone, that whole thing. And I like it because that is something that was even in the Lord of the Rings, like the books, right? Like
Mhm.
the Shire was a place that was like untouched by evil and all the stuff in the movies, right? But in
Yeah.
the books, like there's the whole scouring of the Shire at the end of the at the end of the book where they're like enslaved and people die and they have to like just kill people in the Shire, all the tall folk and stuff. Like it
And I
it
think
is more true to actual Tolkien in that regard, that it is more like it isn't the things that are happening are affecting the little people too, that there is evil in the world that can affect the little people, and that is something to point out when people are taking care of their home, their family, or whatever, right? And I think it makes you care about it more than if it was just some hunky-dory plot line about the mysterious man to cut away from the dark serious
yeah,
part,
yeah.
like I like that it has more serious tones. And I do really like when there's like the part with like the singing and stuff
Yeah.
where it is just the happy-go-lucky. I do like it, but even more because it is more complex than just being so black and white. Especially with like the scene prior with the festival, you think it's
Mhm.
just a festival for that time of the season or whatever, but it's actually them mourning those who they lost, and it's very serious. And it's like we couldn't wait for them, and it means more than just literally just waiting for them.
Yeah.
Like some of them were killed by like Poppy's family was killed by an avalanche. Like it just
Mhm.
happened, right? Like we wait for you is like what they say.
Which is it?
And
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting. I like the "we wait for you"
mhm,
in like well, now that they're in death. I don't know. I think there's something interesting about
it's
that.
a really cool line. Yeah.
I really like, because I feel like I hear talked about a lot that, like, while the movies kind of depict the Shire as this place where everything is perfect and everybody's the way they are and like everything's great and awesome. But I feel like I hear from my friends that have read the books a lot that they say, like, yeah, the Shire is very idyllic in the books, but there's also, you get more of a sense of kind of like, hey, even though these people are living like these great lives, they're also kind of assholes to each other. Like they're
Yeah.
very dismissive of anything that isn't their way.
Mhm.
Um and which I think doesn't come across quite as heavily in the movies.
Right, like they just grumble at Gandalf or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Whereas they show it off a little bit more in this, where they're like, hey, we need to kick these people out of the caravan.
Which I think is like a perfect connection to the Harfoots and the Hobbits. It feels very in line, this idea of, on the surface, very nice and very very kind people that have these very strong held ideals, right? And these very strong held traditions.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you're somebody that is moving against those traditions, it's not as nice.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful on the inside when you participate in the traditions and you hold to them, but independent thinkers possibly are not as supported.
Right, and that's the point of Nori, right? Is to say, yeah, these traditions have helped us in the past, but like it's not always going to be the correct way. There is nothing in the world that is a 100% success rate, right? Mm-hmm. Basically saying that, like, hey, this mysterious man is how we're able to get through this, and it's not the normal way, and that's fine. But we'll see with this episode. It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe Nori flips. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are gonna talk about just the stuff with the Harfoots in this episode. We're gonna go through all the storylines of the episode, and then at the end, we're gonna do a new segment called "Where's Sauron?" Because I feel like this episode threw a ton of red flags in the air for like every storyline, pretty much. So we probably won't touch on the Stranger as much right this second. We'll probably talk more about him later. But what I do want to talk about the Harfoots is that traveling sequence.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Like, it might be my favorite scene in the whole show, despite, being in an episode that I wasn't so hot on. Mm-hmm. Just like, I thought the singing was real. I thought her voice was great. Like, I enjoyed the song. I loved seeing all the locations.
It was stuck in my head because I kept watching it because I was trying to figure out where they're going.
Yeah.
Because I had like the map and I just kept going back through and I was reading about the descriptions. I was on a website called lotrproject.com and they have like a map and you can see, like, you can toggle different places, different timelines. You can toggle like, oh, this was the path that Frodo and Sam took, or this was like what happened in The Hobbit, or this is what Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas did, like their paths and stuff. But they literally have like, oh, this was the history of where the Black Gate is and everything that's happened there, or this is the history of this area. Like, I think it's cool.
I was wondering because we saw that they were in the Grey Marshes, right?
Yeah, they're called the Grey Marshes, yeah.
And I recognized that name, so I was wondering where they're going. Because aren't the Grey Marshes near Mordor, kind of? Don't Frodo and Sam go through them?
Yeah, they go through them. At that point, they're called the Dead Marshes, which we should see that transition later in the show. But they go through the Grey Marshes, and it looks like they kind of end up turning east. I think there's two places that I believe they could be. One of them is like not a consequential place at all, which makes me feel like there isn't. There was just one scene where they show a place called the Braids.
Okay.
And the Braids, I think, is more so. There is like where Minas Tirith is, right? And it's like across from Mordor. I think they're like north of there. In an area called Anorian, which ends up being just like a valley. But the thing is that they say that they're going to the Glen, right? And like the definition of a glen is a secluded, narrow valley, right?
Oh, okay.
The only place there in that area that could be considered a secluded, narrow valley is either going to be like literally where Minas Tirith is, or it is where the Black Gate ends up being in an area called Udun, or that's what it ends up being called later. This is the description on the TolkienGateway.net for Udun, right? Udun was a deep valley in the northwest of Mordor. Like, that's literally like the definition of like a glen, right? Yeah. So I think that might be where they are. And what also leads me to believe that they're there and not where Minas Tirith is that like, so okay, at this point Mordor is not a thing. It's just It's called the Southlands, right? Like at this point I think a lot of people will probably know if they're like listening to podcasts or watching anything. Yeah, this area does end up becoming Mordor. It ends up becoming a place where evil can thrive, right? Like,
Especially after this episode. I think you're
Yeah.
probably going to pick up on it, even if you're just watching the show.
Right. It is something that they're going to be doing, right? So between that and also, so like the fact that there isn't even a Mordor and there are places that they're seeing in the forest where there are no more
Mm-hmm.
like plants, there's like not really any animals, there's just those
The trees are
wolves.
dying. Yeah.
Yeah. It wouldn't make any sense for it to be anywhere on the other side of the mountains where Gondor ends up being, right? Like
Yeah.
Osgiliath, Minas Tirith from the movies, right? Which is kind of what it looked like where they were going, or even more west. But it wouldn't make sense for those areas to be affected by the evil that is going to be in Mordor when it isn't even transformed itself, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't really make a lot of sense. So it'd make more sense to me that they are in an area where the Black Gate ends up being later. Because we see it, they go through the Grey Marshes, but then it seems like they follow a river. So I think it's just kind of more, they embellish the map a bit, which I'm fine with. And you could say even, oh, there was rivers here, and then after Mordor, like there's no more rivers. They dried up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that would make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I think they are. They're where the Black Gate ends up being. Not exactly, but like in that area.
So they're definitely moving towards the plot.
Yes, they are moving towards where everybody else is going to be, or sort of like where everybody is. You know?
Everybody either is or is heading.
One other thing that we didn't really mention in the Discord is that there's some weirdness with timelines where it feels like a lot of time has moved for one timeline and not for another. And I think it was Egg that was saying, I hope that there's another scene where we can see where it lines up everything. And I think that we definitely will very soon. And it makes sense because, they're going to be even closer to what is going to happen.
I think as soon as that maybe Keyblade is used, everybody around is going to get a pretty good idea of what's happening.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about as well, because there was, first of all, I want to talk about like while they were traveling, I noticed on my second watch through that when everybody's talking about how Nori's mother snores, she looks at the stranger for confirmation, and he kind of goes, yeah.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was funny.
I don't know what snore is, but yeah.
I really liked that. And I thought the creature attack scene was pretty cool. Like, without getting too much into the stranger yet, my favorite part of where they're being attacked, were those wolves? What were those?
I think they're just wolves. Yeah.
Were they wolves? They looked kind of weird, so I wasn't sure if they were different. Like
they're not like, they don't look like the warg.
No, they don't.
I think they're just like kind of like warthog / wolf.
They did kind. Yes. But I love when Nori and Poppy and I can't remember who they're with, but the older woman are running.
Marvel or whatever her name is.
Yeah, Marwa, something like that.
Marvel, I think.
Marvel something. So Marvel Studios, something like that. But like they run off frame and the camera stays there for a second and it stays long enough for you to be like, are they running from nothing? This is kind of funny. And then these fucking like wolf things charge past the camera and you're like, oh god.
There's literally like a subtitle that is cricket noises, right? There's literally crickets. I literally wrote down my notes. The wolf jump scare got the whole group chat. Like, everybody laughed in the group chat, and then everyone went, "Oh shit!" Like, once they actually ran. It was so good.
And this is less about the stranger and more about a effect or a makeup thing. His arm looked fucking gnarly after he knocks the creatures away. Like that was great makeup or whatever for like internal bleeding and broken bones and like what your skin looks like when you've really fucked up the stuff underneath.
Oh yeah, it's like blue and purple and the veins are like protruding. That was raw. It looked crazy, and how he's just like kind of looks over like, oh yeah, I am hurt. Like he's like, I don't know what the word is, but I am hurt. Like he's cursing in Elvish in like his head or something. One thing that I wanted to say too, that's like not connected to anything, But the
Mhm.
forest that they're in, it very much reminds me of the scene at the end of the Two Towers film where Gollum ends up, making the plot to kill the hobbits
Oh yeah.
and like, oh yeah, we'll lead him to Shelob, right?
Hmm.
And that's just like how the trees in the area very much looked to me. And also, I feel like would somewhat line up with where they end up going, kind of, right? Like
Hmm.
but
Especially
yeah,
if they're
I thought it
going towards
was,
like the Black Gate. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So I thought that was cool.
I really don't have a whole lot more to say about this storyline because everything else I have to say about it pertains to
Mm.
Sauron.
Yeah. I guess we'll talk about it later too. But like, why the hell did Nori grab his arm? Like maybe grab his
Yeah.
shoulders or something,
Yeah.
bro. Like, come on now, bruh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, man. But yeah, we'll talk about that later more.
Yeah, I'm gonna move us over to the Southlands because this was another one where it was kind of like we're moving things along, you know.
Mm.
There was some big reveals, which fuck you, Jason. First of all, I can't believe. Let's just talk. Let's just fucking talk about it. I can't believe you guessed the Keyblade thing correctly.
Yeah, yeah. It's not even
Like,
canon.
it's not canon. It's just yeah, the fucking sword is a key to transform the land to be a better home for the orcs. I think is like pretty much what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, which at that point you're kind of like, okay, yeah. I I think my favorite parts of this storyline were the Adar stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
really liked and again I can't really talk a whole bunch about Adar just yet because Sauron. Um but one of the scenes that's not directly related to his identity that I wanted to just bring up is when he's holding the orc's arm out in the sunlight and you
Yeah.
see it start to like blister.
Ugh.
It was gross, but it was such a good effect.
Yeah, yeah.
Um I was surprised that Theo did not immediately turn evil and go with Waldrig.
Yeah. I really did think. I have thought the whole time, and I think at this point, I think he's gonna end up being a good guy
Yeah.
now. But I really thought he was gonna be evil, and that they were playing on his youth to make us believe that he would be good.
Yeah.
Uh, but he
I feel
actually ends up
like
being good.
I can't predict what the fuck is gonna happen. Like truthfully, like they could still do a twist at some point, and maybe he chose good once, but he'll choose bad in the future. But
Mm.
the one thing about that scene, like I said earlier that some of the writing in this episode, I think some of the dialogue is a little like it's a little weird. It's just kind of stunted, and it doesn't. It feels unnatural. And
Yeah.
one of the moments where I was like, why are you saying it like that? Is when Bronwyn and Arondir are trying to get everybody to like, okay, let's fucking go. Let's fight these guys. And then Waldrig is giving his speech and he goes, I'll say this for our ancestors, they lived. And I'm like, the fuck does no, they didn't. What did that mean? Your entire country has been subjugated by the elves for hundreds of years. Like, what are you what are you trying to say with that line? Like
Yeah. I mean, I get what he's saying. That
it's
like,
just a
I just
weird
think
way
he's
to
an.
say it.
I think it's more just equated to that he's an idiot.
You just think he's an idiot. That might be it.
Like when has Waldrick like ever made a speech? You know what I mean? Like it
I
would make
guess that's
sense for
true.
him
Yeah.
to not be a super verbose person, right? He's basically saying, if there is one thing to say about our ancestors is that they lived, right? Like
Yeah.
otherwise we
Just-
wouldn't be here, right? Like that's what
yeah.
he's trying to say. And it's a weak ass point, but I think that that's the point is that it's like they are just doing anything and everything to survive. And
Yeah.
I think that that's something that they kind of hammered in a little bit more when Bronwyn starts to have despair, right? Saying,
Yeah. We
like
might as well give up.
maybe it's all we ever will be. Maybe we were just like kidding ourselves that we aren't just these evil people just fighting to survive in any way we can. And I think that it's very real, right? Like
Mhm.
it is a little bit weird when, like, okay, so in the Two Towers, right, when Aragorn's like, ride out and meet them, right? When they're
Yeah.
like at the pits of their despair that like they're all gonna die, right?
Uh-huh.
He doesn't play to his like, there's still hope or whatever. He
Mhm.
plays to, hey, if you're gonna go out with a
Yeah,
bang, bro.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
For death and glory,
right?
Theoden
Exactly.
says.
For death and glory, dude.
Yeah.
But it is very real to be like, hey, we're just like some random people. Like, we don't even live good lives, period. Like, like
Yeah.
our we're scraping for scraps anyway, right? Like, who are we to be able to stand up to like this army? And then when you see the scene where there is like tons of torches from like the army of
Yeah.
orcs that is
Oh,
coming,
I
it's like,
can't
yeah,
wait.
of course you would be like despairing and stuff.
I
Uh,
that's got to be next episode. I need some. I really hope they don't save that conflict for like the finale.
I doubt it. I think it's either next episode or the episode after.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it begins. Maybe there's some weird feigned
I
diplomacy or something that happens in the next episode, and then the episode after that it goes down. But I could see it going down in the next episode as well.
I feel like if it's not in the next episode, we can't see the Southlands
Right?
at
Yeah,
all in the
yeah.
episode. Which I
It
think
wouldn't
would
make
be
any
weird
sense
because I
unless it
think
was like one scene,
yeah, it's like
like a throwaway one.
I can think of like I it'd be weird to not see the Southlands next week, especially when they have such an important thing about to happen. Like
Mm.
if we saw Numenor next week and they're just like on a fucking boat, but we didn't see the Southlands, I'd be
Right.
like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah. When you say that, it does make more sense. Like, if anything is going to take like kind of more of like a filler break where not much happens, it is Numenor, right?
Yeah.
Like they're traveling. Right?
I think we get maybe like one scene of them at most because they're on
Yeah.
boats. It's gonna take them a little bit.
I'm assuming a Galadriel Halbrand scene,
Mm-hmm.
and then a Isildur plus friends or plus his dad scene, right?
Okay.
And maybe Elendil is also in the Halbrand Galadriel scene. Like I would guess 2 scenes. So then, therefore, there's no way in hell it doesn't go down next episode.
Yeah.
So I think you talked me into believing it as well. I think it goes down next episode.
I will say that you turned me around on that Waldrick line. I was very against it, but your context of like he's just kind of stupid makes it work better for me.
Well, and why I also like that scene is that it like very much mirrors what you see in the previous episode where everyone on Numenor is like, I'll serve, and
Yeah.
everyone's like literally people are raising their hands. It's like the same
Yeah.
type of scene, but then Waldrig is like, no, like he's just so evil, and
They do a
I
good
love
job
it.
of juxtaposing the two.
Exactly, yeah. Like I wouldn't like it to be in the same episode. Like it would feel a little bit on the nose, but being in the next episode, I do like it. Where it's like, yeah, this is how it can go down. Like if anybody is, if not everyone's on the same page, this is how it will go down. And it feels more real and
Mm-hmm.
like what would actually happen. There would be at least one person who would then, there's probably some good people that go out with them.
Mm-hmm.
That are just like, I just want to survive. I just want my family to survive. Things like that.
I bet the good people aren't alive anymore after the
Yeah. Dude, yeah.
that
Speaking
scene
of
towards the
which, right? Like, what's his name? Rowan. Rowan's dead, bro.
Yeah, Rowan's dead. I don't want to
Rowan-
talk too much about that scene because I think it kind of leans into the Sauron conversation, but Rowan
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely dead.
That was so raw, dude. That was crazy. That actor, he's a good actor, dude.
Yeah, the kid was very good.
Yeah, he was good.
Waldrick. Dude, at that
He
moment when he's like,
squeals.
while he's squealing is the first moment I realized that he was the kid that like was yelling at Arondir in the first episode. I didn't realize it was the same person. I think he looks more put together in every scene since he yelled at Arondir. And it wasn't until that scene there when he's like at his worst moment where I was like, oh shit, that's the same kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I immediately was like, oh yeah, this is the guy who's like, lay off us. One day our king will come here and we won't be under your pointy boots.
You won't live to see it.
Yeah. Waldrick killed your ass.
We've mentioned it a couple times already. I think we shift over to Numenor for now, which Numenor is, I think, my biggest problem with the episode. I think just structurally, Numenor's storyline in this episode's kind of a mess. Especially, I love Bear McCreary. I think this show might go down as Bear McCreary's best work. But
It's
ending
so good.
2 episodes in a row with his triumphant score, it's the same ending to the last episode and this episode. of like the only
Yeah.
difference is like they actually leave this time, but it's the
Mhm.
same idea of like, okay, uh we're not sure what we're gonna do, but then actually we decide that we're going to do it, and we have the triumphant music blaring as everybody is like, yes, let's do it. Like that's it's kind of the same ending
For sure.
twice.
I think what makes it bad is that it's 2 episodes back to back.
It's 2 episodes
But I
back to back,
get
and in between it slows way down.
Yeah. No, I agree. In a more meta sense, I think the reason that they do it is because I don't think that's gonna happen a lot in the next episodes,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah,
There's not
yeah.
gonna be some triumphant ending at the end of every episode. I think it's
Yeah.
gonna get a lot worse for our friends in Middle Earth. I will say I agree with you, and the Numenor stuff is the majority of the episode, and so
Mhm.
that's why it does go down a couple of points. But I will say, Amazon be flexing their budgets
They really do.
hard when they're in Numenor, dude.
They really do.
It looks so good. There's not a single thing that I can ever point out and be like, yeah, that doesn't really look right, or something. Like, it always just looks so good. I feel like the extras are so good in this too. It really sells it for me. Like, whether or not you feel like, oh, this is really Middle Earth or not, like, because I know there's a lot of people where that's like their problem they're having with it. Regardless of whether you think it's Middle Earth, it is definitely like a believable fantasy world, period,
Yeah.
dude. Especially in Numenor. Like,
Dude.
oh my god, it sells so well.
When the boats exploded,
Yes.
I mean, it was a little ridiculous, but I didn't really care because the explosions were so good.
Yeah.
Like,
The second boat blowing up didn't make a lot of sense, but yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna stay on the negative for a minute just because I want to get the negative stuff out of the way. I think
Okay, yeah.
the big problem with the Numenor storyline is the Sealdor's plotline. I think
Yeah,
it
I agree.
makes absolutely no sense what they did with him in this episode.
Plus his sister Arian.
Yeah. Yeah,
I feel like a scene of hers was cut or something because like they don't even explain to you, and I don't know if it's just more like, okay, let's not beat this on the head or whatever, because it makes sense. Oh, I don't want my father to go to war, right? Or by extension my brother or something, right?
Mhm.
But like Numenor has never been at war during her lifetime. Like she wouldn't have like this like fear of war in that way. I get like fear of war just in general or whatever, right? But like I don't know, like her just adamant hatred of them leaving, it feels kind of like random.
This is something that I kind of brought up, I think, last week, where I was talking about the scene where she was watching Farazan give his speech, and I just had no fucking clue what I was supposed to be getting out of that. The shots
Like
of her.
what she's thinking or something.
And I
yeah.
continue to have no fucking clue. Like, I know that she's saying that she doesn't want this to happen. I have no idea why. Like, I don't know if it's that they're not giving her a whole ton to do, or if they're like cutting scenes. I don't know if it's the actress, as much as I hate to say it. I
don't know what any actress would be able to do with it.
Yeah, I just mean like even when they go to like a close up, the expression is just kind of blank. I'm like, I don't know, like, if you were told to be blank or if there's an emotion you're supposed to be portraying to me right now that you're just not
I get what
nailing.
you mean. Yeah.
Like, and I wouldn't be able to know. I wouldn't be able to know that, you know, like only somebody watching them film the scene and hearing the director would be able to know, or reading the scripts would be able to know what was supposed to be conveyed in those close-ups. But I just get nothing out of them. And I really don't understand why it extends. Okay, I liked the scene where Farazan was talking about like, hey, this is actually a good idea because we can start to fucking colonize Middle Earth and we can spread Numenor's influence and power.
Like a vassal state, pretty much. Yeah.
It's great. I don't know why the fuck his kid went to blow the ship up after that. Like, his dad gave a great explanation for why we should be doing this.
Love.
He's just like,
you
dude,
feel
I'm
like
sorry.
he's on board. I feel like he's like somewhat on board. Like, and in the way that like we don't feel like we get why a Aryan, like what emotion she's supposed to feel. I feel like what it felt like he was portraying to me was that he was conflicted about like, how do I tell her, right?
Yeah, yeah. He was like, man, this hot girl that I want to bang really doesn't want this to happen, but my dad is making great points, and
He makes sense, yeah.
there's a lesson being taught to me about leadership and about how to be a political player in the game, right? Like this is
Yeah.
important to me as somebody that's going to be playing these roles in the future. And then he's like, I'm going to go blow up the boats. And I'm like, why? I don't,
Yeah.
unless it's just he really wants to fuck her and so he's doing it for that. But I literally cannot think of any other reason as to why.
Yeah.
And then it goes further into, and I get why Farazan, like when they meet after the boat is blown up, Farazan's like, you know what, maybe we should pump the brakes, which I think makes sense because it's showing more of how Farazan is like very in tuned to he's a very good politician.
He gets that he sees through it. He gets that it was somebody who was there. Like,
yeah,
Elendil says, "Oh, it could have been a passing brigand or something," right? But like, he sees that it's like it was somebody in our city, you know?
Yeah, and I think it was like him being, he's such a good politician that he realizes like, hey, maybe we back off a little bit, like, and we don't do this because I don't want to upset the masses, especially when I've been plotting so hard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does feel a little weird for him to back off so quickly from the plan, like that scene when he's been supporting it.
Yeah.
To then have him be like, actually, you know what? Maybe we don't do this. Like, I think it makes sense, but it just feels a little sudden.
Well, I don't know. I don't think it feels super sudden because it's like, okay, imagine if something like blew up in your city, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And that's with like future technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like crazy things happen all over the world, and we know things that happen all over the world all the time through social media and the news and everything, right? This is like medieval, like when something blows up, dude, it's like that's what you talk about for like the next like 20 years, bro. Like that is the craziest thing that's gonna happen for like your whole lifetime, right?
True.
Like you'll be talking to your grandchildren. One time there was some boats at the dock, and not just one of them, but two of them blew up. You know, like that's the most like craziest event that's gonna. Well, actually, not really for these people. No. Some crazier shit's gonna happen, but. Like it would be a super big event for them, you know?
For sure. I think what might have helped me a little bit with it is if maybe there'd been one more scene of like unrest between the boats blowing up and then him coming in and him being like, they're really fucking mad. Like maybe we don't do this, you know? Like maybe if we just saw him walking through a crowd yelling at him. I know they do that earlier.
They do that, yeah.
But I think if maybe they'd done that scene
there instead, yeah.
Yeah. And
I get why they needed to set up the Kemen scene, yeah.
Yeah, if they had had Kemen and Eardian scene be a different scene and have Farazan with the people being mad between the boat blowing up and the meeting, I think it would have flowed a little better to me. But it seems like before he isn't like even acknowledging the idea of like these people don't want us to go, and then the boat blows up and all of a sudden he's like, maybe we shouldn't go, where I think it would flow better if boat blows up, he's like, oh shit, people are mad. And then he tells them we should stop. And I mean, I think I'm getting really nitpicky here. So I want to move on because I think there's a much bigger problem.
One last thing I'll say with it, though, is that like, so it's kind of like what we said earlier, but I really just want to hammer home that it's like, not only did I not care about the Eardian Kemen scenes before, but now I feel like they're even more dumb because you're not giving me a reason as to why they're doing what they're doing. I have to guess, right?
Yeah.
And in guessing, it makes them feel really illogical. It makes them feel very shallow as characters. And then also the fact that we have all these reasons as to why you have this whole laundry list as to why Kemen should not blow the boats up. And then even more once he runs into Isil, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then, like, he just still does it. When the only reason that they even give us for him to do it is to please a girl that he likes.
Yeah.
And
it's apparently just met, by the way. Like, they don't know each other. They haven't been like
friends
a week
since
ago, or something,
Like a week ago at most. And then also, then when you dig even deeper into, okay, well then maybe it's because he really understands why the girl doesn't want to. We don't see any scene of them talking about it other than her just being, then speak louder. And it's like, damn, they really thought that was a mic drop line. Yeah, it wasn't. By the way.
I think I know what they're getting to, but I think they're doing a really bad job getting there. And I think what they're getting to is I'm pretty sure Farazan got left behind. Kemen and Eodian definitely got left behind. And everybody that has a positive view on the future of Numenor just left. So I think what they're trying to get at is that they just left Numenor in the hands of a bunch of people that are directly opposed to their points of view. And I think by the time they get back, the public is going to possibly not be as aligned with Miriel and Elendil. I think
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some major political shifts while this expedition is happening that they're going to return to. And I think that's what they're trying to set up, but I think they're just fucking not.
No, I agree. I think Muriel dies in Middle Earth. Like that's not what happens.
Back. Yeah,
that's not what happens to her canonically. But I think that's what will happen. Either that, or she will, be deposed while she's there.
I actually think that makes a lot of sense if she dies at Middle Earth, and then because we know Elendil at some point has to take some sort of leadership role, so it would make sense if he comes back to try and take a leadership role, and Farazan has embedded himself into Numenor, and we get some Elendil and Farazan kind of clashing over who's going to be the leader with Miriel gone, and Farazan kind of has the lead because he was gone. He stayed behind during the expedition. And then I think that could lead to some interesting dynamics between Eodian and the rest of her family if she's on the opposite side. But again, I don't think they're doing a good job of setting all that up. I think it could lead to interesting storytelling, but the setup hasn't been good.
Yeah. I agree.
And again, I don't even think this is the worst part of the Numenor storyline, because I think the worst part of the Numenor storyline is the Isildur's plot line, because I felt it was absolutely pointless. It felt like this whole, so much of this is I really don't like. This is the most passionately upset I'm going to be about this show ever, probably.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. I don't understand when they keep talking about okay, I don't understand why when the big moment at the end of the last episode is him stepping up and being making a decision, I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to find my purpose.
Yeah.
Why we then have to spend a whole episode with him trying to get onto the boat? Let him on the boat. I promise you, nobody's going to be it doesn't make sense that they let him on the boat. Nobody's going to fucking care. Just move on.
When they, I feel like they would win. It would win over. Everybody would be like, why would they just let him on? Right?
Yeah.
I feel like maybe they knew they wanted to have him on the boat, but they felt like people would complain about, he just gets to get on? He's not even done anything, right? Which is what Elendil ends up saying, what are your qualifications, right? Maybe they just wanted to have that in order to, basically shut up anyone who would say that, right?
I think it's made, even
I think it would have been fine.
Yeah, I think it would have been fine. I think it's made even worse by the fact that he gets on the boat at the end. Because then it's why the fuck did we do all this? The same ending happens, but we did not need to do all this
it very much felt sitcom-y in that it's a lot of this stuff is pretty inconsequential that happens. I do like the world building and the lore building that happens with Galadriel and Halbrand and stuff, but the seal stuff is pretty ridiculous that you have the let me on with the dead, and then let me on with the friends. Also, I do like the one that gets promoted to lieutenant. I think he's a good actor. I like him. I think the fucking blonde friend is just a bad actor. I don't know, dude.
Really? I think he's comedic relief.
I get that he's comedic relief, but I don't even feel like he is good at it. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't want to be super disrespectful to the guy, but I don't. It just doesn't work for me. I don't know.
And you talk about how they're all saying Isildur, you won't serve, you don't
you just flake on everything.
Yeah, you just flake on everything because you have this obsession with the West. But that doesn't mean anything because I don't know why he's obsessed with the West.
Exactly.
The whole conversation of why don't you just go west then, Isildur? And I'm what the fuck is west? Why am I why am I supposed to be conflicted about his confliction, right? Why am I supposed to care about his confliction between serving and following his dream to go west when I don't know what his dream is?
Yeah. Well, and the whispering female voice in the past episodes where he's staring at what I would assume is the west side of the island. Because it can't be Middle Earth where he's looking at. Because Middle Earth is so far away, you couldn't see it from... Even if they're way out at sea, there's no way you could see it. They're that far apart, right? There's that weirdness. And then now he's obsessed with Middle Earth? And it can't even be that it's like you're mixing it up, because Middle Earth is to the east of Numenor.
No, yeah.
So
He's
that
not
can't be
being
it
called
either.
to Numenor, or he's not being called to Middle Earth. Like
Right.
he's yeah.
And then he has this
I don't
random
understand.
feeling. Well, then it's like they forgot what they were saying. They were like, okay, so he wants to go to the west, and he's just doing what he feels is right in his heart, right? Like, that's understandable. Like, that is a thing. That is something that has been done in many, many stories, and I don't feel like it is like an undeserved thing to do, right? Like, it would make sense even if that was just the plot period, right? You wouldn't have to set up anything else for me. But then the fact that he gets his friends fired and ruins their
Mhm.
lives, right?
Mhm.
That's the problem, right? And then it's like going from last episode to this episode, they forgot why he wasn't gonna go. Because it was like, I can't go because I ruined my friends' lives. And then he has this sudden change of heart where he's like, oh, I'll serve, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like they forgot that he was like, oh, my friends are fine now. I can go to the west. Now he randomly is like, I have to do something truly great, worthy of Numenor, and then I can go to the west. It's like,
Yeah.
why?
I don't understand it. I thought they were gonna give me context, which is why I've kind of been like, I mean, I feel like you've kind of seen the writing on the walls a little bit with the sealed door as we've been going, and I'm like, no, they'll explain it. They'll explain it. And now he's like leaving, and I'm like, you still haven't explained it. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like it should have been explained before he left, so that we had context for what the weight of the weight of what he was leaving behind would
Mhm.
mean. Yeah.
Well, and I don't even knowing what's going to happen, like, I don't really understand what he's going to learn going to Middle Earth. Like,
Yeah.
I can understand what war can do to, like, harden somebody and
Hmm.
to grow up fast. Maybe that's what they're trying to do.
Hmm.
Like, maybe his friends are gonna get killed in front of him or something, or he was too weak to save them, or maybe he cowards out again. Who knows? Like,
Hmm.
uh,
I don't know.
we'll see. But
I'm gonna shift to nice mode because there is still actually a couple things. There were a couple things about Isildur that I liked, and I liked when Vilendil beat the shit out of him.
yeah, that scene was
Um,
good.
I thought that was good. I just like the way he fucking brought him to the ground. I thought it was choreographed really well.
Hmm.
And it's a little kind of weird detail, but I love how much they show um the affection that Isildur has for his friends and they have for him, and how they show like they give like physical affection of like hugs and stuff like
Hmm.
throughout the episodes, which is something in the Lord of the Rings movies that I think a lot of people latch onto, is the relationship between Frodo and Sam, because you don't see in a lot of media relationships between two male best friends where they are like they hug each other and they are
Hmm.
like very nice to each other and they speak honestly and like emotionally with each other.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think they're kind of hitting on that with Isildur and Valendil at least. So I appreciate that they're at least trying to capture that tone as well.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I like the sword fighting scene with the friend as
yes.
well. Everybody in the call we did this watch together with a bunch of people in Discord, and like everyone in there is like, oh great, like Isildur is gonna come up because Isildur hears that there's a fight or
Yeah.
whatever, and he's gonna grab a sword and then he's gonna nick her, and then that's why, like, he's just gonna barely cut her or something, and
Yeah.
that's how he gets on the boat and gets promoted to lieutenant even. Oh my gosh, like, but
I'm glad they didn't do
I'm glad they didn't.
that.
I'm so glad they didn't. It would have been so contrived.
I like that scene a lot though. I think it's a really
Yeah.
fun piece of action. Um, Especially in an episode that's kind of light on action for the most part. So I really
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that sequence. I liked the Hallbrand storyline a lot. We'll kind of
Yes.
we'll talk a little bit about Hallbrand now and then a lot more later, because I feel like there was a lot in this episode that maybe Sauron related, but
He's just a great character.
he's a great character.
Both in like his complexity and just badassery. Like,
Mhm.
you see him forge a weapon that looks like so pristine.
He
Even
like does the
the
flip with
men
the
there.
sword.
That too. He's such a good character. I love Halbrand.
And I really like the scene between him and Galadriel in like where she kind of encourages him to step up and do his
Yes.
duty.
Cinematically,
Although
it's great.
cinematically it's great. When he asks why do you keep fighting and she responds because I cannot stop. I feel like in the voice call we went, "What?" Like
Yeah.
I I really like the monologue that follows. How she talks about
Yeah.
like my men mutinied against me. I was sent away by my king. Like, and at every step of every step down the path, it's been because they can't differentiate the darkness like in me with the darkness outside or whatever. Like, she has a very
Yeah.
good speech that I really liked. It was just the lead into it of her being like, because I cannot stop. I was like,
Yeah.
really?
I think
That's
it was
the
just
line?
to me, it was like the delivery of the line.
I also
If
don't know
she,
how you could deliver that line
if she
differently.
had shouted it, I'd have been like, oh, shoot. Like,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I think if she would have shouted it, or like maybe if they had done something on her voice or something, like, I don't know, bro. Like,
How dare
uh,
you? How dare you slander the love of my life?
I think if she would have, I think if she would have delivered it a bit differently,
Yeah.
I think the line itself does work. I really like that scene because of cinematically, and
Yes.
like one thing I forgot to touch on with like how well I guess we were going to talk about it more later, but
Mm,
the tone of this episode is what I think a lot of people have the problems with, and
mm,
is what was talked about in the Discord. Literally, like, you know, what I think the problem is that the transitions in the episode don't feel as purposeful.
mm,
But the one exception that I really feel in this is that there's actually two that I feel are still up to par. Is, you know, seeing him saying, you know, you don't know what I've done. Like, these people
yeah.
will
And
cast
then
me
we
out
cut.
once they figure out,
Yeah.
and then it cuts to the people starting to kneel at Adar's feet and stuff. And then going back to it again. It does feel like incredibly purposeful, and it fits the tone perfectly.
The last thing about that scene between Galadriel and Halbrand that I really liked was bringing back the idea of having to touch the darkness to find the light, which is something that Finrod said to Galadriel in the first episode. So I like
I do like
that.
that callback,
I
yeah.
like that she carried that back to her, and that lesson from her brother has obviously stuck with her entire life. Beyond even just like having her remember it while she was supposed to be going to Valinor, but also just her saying that to Halbrand.
When Muriel is like summoned to her father or whatever,
Oh yes,
and then he is saying, you know, don't go. Oh yeah, I just found it. I just found it. So like, I think this is another part that just in general with what we're talking about as well, with the Numenor stuff not being as good in this episode. It's like,
mm,
I don't understand why her father doesn't want her to go to Middle Earth, while at the same time is wanting her to return to like the old ways, working with the elves. You know,
yeah,
it almost feels like he's perma in like a state of looking into Palantir. Like, that's what they try to make
yes.
it seem like. Or is he just senile? Because he's like talking to her. He's literally in the middle of talking to her and then goes, wait, Muriel? Right?
I think what it is I think like we were talking about how she's like she's not going to be here to stop Farazan from seizing power. I
Mm,
think that's what he's talking about. I think you're right that he has seen something in the Palantir or is seeing something in the Palantir that the others haven't, that is like maybe he's seen more of the vision or something. And I think
hmm.
part of it is if Muriel goes to Middle Earth and like dies there, she's not going to be here to stop Farazan from making everything so much worse.
What I would say that I feel like she could have brought up or whatever. Obviously, she's shocked because her dad
Yeah.
is showing like signs of being senile or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And also is telling her, you know, all you will get when you go is darkness. Like, that's what
Yeah.
awaits you there, right?
Yeah.
Um, one thing that they could be said is that either he is tripping or the white tree is tripping. Because as soon as they started working with Galadriel, the tears of the Valar stopped. The leaves stopped falling,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So to me, if I'm like going to believe that if we're doing the correct thing, that the tree won't start falling leaves, like, to me, it's like, how, Dad, the thing that I'm doing here is stopping the leaves from falling. You're gonna tell me this is the wrong thing to do? Like,
What I
did
could see is I could see like oh do you mean that as like what she should have said? Or like why
that's what I would be saying if I'm her,
if you were
right?
her, okay.
I'm like, hey, like, Dad, like, the leaves were falling as I was making this decision to
Yeah.
not go to Middle Earth, and then as soon as we start these preparations to go to Middle Earth, the tears of the Valar stopped. The leaves stopped falling. So how can this
Yeah.
not be the correct thing, right?
Yeah.
Even though, like, I know what I'm pretty sure I know what's going to happen. I would still, if I'm of this like faith thinking mind, I would think that it is the right thing. And then the father's like, no, don't do it. Like, all that awaits you there is darkness. But that leads me directly into what I was going to say as well, is as soon as he says darkness, then it transitions to the scene with the meteor man with his hand in the water.
Yeah.
Which, on your first watch through, doesn't immediately click that that is what they are leading into, that tone. And then that scene happens, and I think it sets it up perfectly, and it feels very, very purposeful. So I think that one, and then the transition with the whole Galadriel and Halbrand in the Forge scene transition into the Adar stuff. I think those two are of the same quality that I feel like was happening throughout the rest of the show. Whereas there is a lot of cutting, like almost like dry cuts, it feels like.
In this episode.
You're not transferring the tone over. Because even when you're doing like what we talked about earlier, where, you know, there's like these crazy scenes with the orcs and then it cuts to the Harfoots, but you still keep that creepy tone even just for a second. I think that works way better. Whereas it feels like you're not giving the tone over. You're not, like, it feels like you were just done with what you wanted to say and then now you're on to the next thing. Which, it's like, I get that like you can't hit home runs every single time, so I'm gonna give it a little bit of a pass, but there is still some really good ones in this episode.
And I just, because I do want to go back around just a little bit to what you were saying about like him not wanting her to go. And I think what would be interesting is if the idea is that the wrong decision was to send Galadriel back without any like men to go to war with her to help her, you know, like what needs to happen is the men of Numenor need to go to war, but or else like the world will end, like Sauron will win if that happens. And I think what would be very interesting is if the idea is that Miriel going won't cause the end of the world, but it will be very bad for specifically Numenor because Pharazôn will be left in control. And so that is kind of why like he's like, hey, don't do this because it's going to be bad for like us and you and like our people.
Yeah.
But the tree isn't necessarily freaking out because it's still going to result in a victory in the end. Because what's important is Numenor going to war, not Numenor itself.
Yeah. And that is something that is a plot device in all of the Lord of the Rings, that there is so many things in the Lord of the Rings. There's so many YouTube videos. You could go watch hundreds of hours of YouTube videos that people have made where, hey, what if this literal one thing changed? How would
everything change? Yeah.
And it changes the whole freaking story every time, right?
Yeah,
so I think that it's another one of those things where maybe it's a selfish feeling of the king where he's like, don't do this, right?
Yeah.
Even though it is the right thing, he's saying, don't do this.
And
I think that's like a real thing. You know, somebody who loves you can say, hey, I don't think that this is the best thing in a selfish way, you know? Like, even if it is probably the right thing to do.
I don't want you to be hurt, you know?
Right.
Even though it would be best for the world, you know?
Yeah.
All right, let's shift over to the final storyline, the elves and the dwarves, and then we'll talk about Sauron stuff. Elves and the dwarves, I thought that it was okay. There wasn't a lot of it, but there was some very important stuff that I think is probably going to upset some hardcore Tolkien nerds, or maybe they'll be totally cool with it. I don't know. I will say how I feel about it is, because obviously the mithril thing, the mithril backstory, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the idea of like giving an explanation for why mithril is special, where I am like, what's going on is the idea.
Well, it feels Tolkien as well, like in tone and
this whole like light of the Eldar going out thing where like we need to get the mithril together to bathe the elves in the light so that they can like, or else they're all gonna fucking fade away or something. That's like where like I feel like I'm seeing the beginning of an Isildur plotline where I'm like, okay, we're building up this plot line, but I don't have any idea at all why. Like, what is the narrative payoff for this going to be? And I'm not judging it just yet because, like, maybe 3 episodes from now, I'm like, perfect. Like, that was a great idea to do that. Like, the way they resolve it is great. But my worry is it's going to be like how I felt at the end of this episode, where I was like, why did we just waste all that time on that Isildur plot line? Like, when this doesn't...
I think that's exactly what it's going to be, honestly. Because, so the whole
I want to know how you
plot,
feel because you're more connected to the lore than I am.
I think it's a really cringe thing, honestly.
Okay.
to change it. Like,
Mhm.
you're telling me that this tree in Aragion, which, mind you, like, or in Linden, I mean, sorry, this
Mhm.
tree in Linden is the main connection to them having connection to the Valar, right? So you're setting this precedence that is
Okay,
not
so that's the
true.
part that you think is real. I thought you were talking about the mithril
No,
overall.
there's two parts to it that
Okay.
make me think it's cringe, right?
Okay.
It's not just that. If you
Okay.
were to tell me that, that is fine to me. But then to say, okay, yeah, this tree, which is a living thing, is the connection for them in the Valar. Like it's there's like two things with that even that I
Yeah.
don't think really lines up. They say that is a symbol of their very like what was the
Essence or
exact term?
something? Or
He says it is a symbol of the very strength of his people or
Mm.
something like that,
Mhm.
right? And for that to be dying, that is alarming. And so yeah, they should be taking action. But to say that it is literally going to mean that they will fade away into nothing feels very different than what they said before, right?
Yeah.
That is a symbol of it. It isn't
Yeah.
literally. But then a couple episodes later, they're saying that it literally is. It is literally their connection to the
I guess
Valar.
that's the hidden secret or whatever, is that it's not just a symbol, but I think that's dumb.
Even that, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, right?
Mhm.
So then, even if you say, oh, Elrond didn't say that to the dwarves because that's like a super big secret, right?
Mhm.
Why wouldn't he say it to Durin and Disa in their own home or whatever? It doesn't feel like it really lines up for Elrond for me.
Mhm.
But even if that is true, right? Then you're saying, okay, well, the tree is the symbol and the connection, literally, to the light of the Valar that keeps them being immortal. Not only just immortal, actually, but their entire life force. If this tree were to
Mhm.
be burned down, all elves would wither away within
So weird.
a
That's
couple
so
months.
weird. Yeah.
Doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then also, you're telling me, okay, this living tree, is dying. There's some blight. There's all this stuff. What do we need to do? We need to essentially worship some rocks. What? How does that make any sense? This is like literally like, imagine if this was in like, I don't know, like the Bible or something, where it's like, this is a symbol of a connection of us and God. Let's worship this mineral, this rock.
Yeah.
This seems like so completely ass backwards to me, right? Oh, to bathe in the light. It was the light of the lost Silmarils, which is also completely changes the lore of the Silmarils as well, which is a
Yeah.
bit weird as well. But like these things, when you're like stacking them on top of each other, okay, it was just the symbol of it. Okay, now it's literally their life force. Okay, not only is it like how they're immortal, it's literally their life force.
Yeah.
Then
Like they
they'll
will die without it, not
Yeah.
just like become mortal.
within the spring,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't make like a lot of the things that they're saying. It's just like, okay, this is like you're stretching it, bro. Like
They just
it
keep
doesn't feel
pulling it
good.
further and further. Like, yeah, no, 100%. I just want to clarify because I want to make sure that your feelings are like clear on this. The mithril part of it, like just the mithril.
That's fine to me.
You're
That's
fine with
fine
that.
to me.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were to say that, oh, it was a elf that was pure of heart, and even like they name drop Manwë, who's like supposed
Yeah.
to be like the
head
he's like the
angel or
Zeus.
something,
He's
right?
like the Zeus of the
Okay.
Valar, right?
Okay.
Or like he is like the most pure of heart. Literally, when Morgoth, like the bad, even when Morgoth apologizes,
Mhm.
he can't even perceive that he would be lying because like evil and darkness and stuff are just that obtuse to him, right?
Mhm.
So that is one of the ways where Morgoth ends up getting away with, stealing the Silmarils and killing the two lights of the trees that you see in the prologue of the first episode, right?
Mhm.
And that's due to Manwë. But he's saying, like it's like the pure light of Manwë was in him. And then he's fighting Balrog, which is like, it literally looks like a demon. You know what I mean? Like it's the
Yeah.
most demon thing in Lord of the Rings. And then not only that, but a lightning bolt struck it at the same time. Like I think that's cool.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fantasy to me. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like that the lightning struck down into the mountain and it made these veins of mithril, and then there's that. But to say that is like the tree had a Silmaril in it.
Yeah.
You're completely changing how there's a Silmaril in the sky, and that's Elrond's dad. There's a
So we know
Silmaril that was
one for
put.
sure.
There's a Silmaril that was cast like a dude literally kills himself jumping into a volcano. Don't know how that gets to a tree on top of a mountain.
So do you think that's the one that they changed? That's the one where it's like he no longer jumped in the thing, he put it in the tree instead?
That's
Because
the only one I could think of, because then the other one gets cast out into the ocean.
yeah, and it can't be the star one because the star we know, like I think you could make the argument that since we don't know for certain, they haven't explicitly said the ocean thing, it could be that one. But we know with the star one, like they talked about that.
Or they're
like,
changing the number of Silmarils there are. I don't know, dude. Like
Yeah.
that to me is whatever. I don't really care a lot. I'm fine with how they're explaining what Mithril
It's the tree
is.
stuff with the fucking light of the Eldar that's like, what the fuck are we doing?
That part where it's like, if this tree dies, all elves die is a bit weird. If you were to say that it was symbolically, hey, like this is something that we believe was like pure good, like and pure evil mixed, which is a bit weird, and then also lightning. I don't know, is that just supposed to be nature or chaos or something? Like you're mixing in chaos or something? I don't know. But like, even if you were to say that, okay, so symbolically, we think that if we were to get Mithril, our people would then become stronger because of it, and then the tree would in turn not be blighted. That would be different as well. But to say that it is literally they need to bathe, I literally have a quote of it.
Yeah, bathe in the light of the Mithril, right? Or
okay, so he says this is Celebrimbor. So to give more context to the scene that I'm going to talk about, so there was already the scene of Elrond and Gil-galad and stuff, and then it's when they come back to the Aragon thing, or I guess they're in Lindon, but it's Celebrimbor saying like, "Hey, I have tested it under every duress, like its light does not diminish." And then Elrond says, "Is it really our only salvation?" Right? And then he says, "This is the quote: If we can secure enough to saturate every last elf in the light of the Valar once more, then yes, it very well could be." Right?
Such a weird quote.
Yeah. Well, and then it's like you're changing it because it's not the light of the Valar, it's the light of a Silmaril. Are you changing what the Silmaril is? Like the Silmaril is the light of the tree in Valinor. That's a bit different, but I don't. It's a bit semantics, but at the same time, I think that there is so many levels to it that it doesn't. If you change this, it would work for me. If you change that, it would work for me. Like there is so many things where it's like this doesn't make sense when you're stacking all of it on top of each other. I think it's a bit cringe. And what it makes it even more cringe to me is that, like, if you were telling me that the whole Mithril plot was in order to advance the dwarves, because the whole forge being built is already advancing the story of the elves. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but that is a major, major thing that is happening. I don't think you need to add any more urgency to what is happening with the elves. Yeah, I think that it's fine. There is already going to be some stuff that happens very quickly. I think that is literally just a season 1 thing. I think it will be wrapped up in season 1.
Yeah, I said this off stream, but like you kind of touched on a little bit just now. Literally, or off stream, off recording. Literally, the only reason I can think of this plotline existing is to drive a wedge between the two Dardans, which is what you were just saying. Like this plotline only existing to advance the dwarf storyline would be very weird, and that's the only thing. Well, I can think of it being relevant to.
Well, okay, so to me, it's like they mixed it up to me, dude. They fucked it up. If the Mithril being found and all of this stuff was in order to advance the dwarf plotline, I like it. It is a point of contention between the two Durins. It is Mithril, which is like the strongest metal in all of Middle Earth, and it is, I'm pretty sure, is literally used in one of the rings of power for the elves. Like it's important. And even if you were to say, what I thought they were going to do to make it important to the elves was that, okay, they build the forge, right? And then like something happens, like it like kind of blows up or something because it's too big. It's not strong enough. There's no metal that they can use in order to actually make it so this forge actually works properly, or so to the degree that they need to. So they use Mithril. That would make sense to me. But to say that it is this mithril, which is always inherently in core a dwarven thing, to then change it and be like, no, the elves care about this, is weird. You fucked it up. You don't need to add more urgency to the elves. The elves are never an urgent race. They always take forever to do anything. It's because they're freaking immortal. We already set this up. So to say that it is, and then not even talking about the idea that they're delving deep in order to go to the mithril and what that indicates, and the fact that we saw a Balrog in the like the fact that we saw a Balrog in the trailer, and that it is Durin the Fourth, who is supposed to be alive in the Third Age. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, you fucked it up, bro. Like, you just mixed these up. Like, leave it out of the elves, dude. Like, this storyline, like, I love Elrond. Durin continues to be the best dwarf in all of on-screen fantasy, period. I think he is so good. But then you're fucking it up with this weird shit, dude. Please. And like, it's even more cringe because you're fucking up so much lore and just muddying all of this up, where it feels like it was very ironed out. It seemed very, very clear what was happening, and I think that that's fine. You can have it be clear if it's good, but then
it's like they're trying to throw a twist in, but it's like, but wait, what the fuck? Like,
just for the sake of the first season. It's going to be over and done with in this season, most likely. I'll be pissed if it's in the second season, bro. Like, this is, not only is it not canon, it doesn't make sense. Why would elves care about a dwarven ore that is like the bounty of Khazad-dûm, which is like inherently just a dwarven thing? Like, it just fucks it up in so many ways. And fucking up the lore to just be a one-season thing. Like, it just messes it up, dude. It makes me so sad, because this was my favorite plot line so far, dude. Like,
at least I'll say this, dude. At least Durin continues to be the best part of it, because he does nothing wrong in this episode. Every scene he's in is perfect.
Yeah.
I will leave off this plot line by quoting a genius, a saint amongst men. Enough with the quail sauce. Give me the meat and give it to me raw.
True.
All right. Not time for a new segment, although it's a segment we've been doing every episode until now. But now I'm giving it a name and I'm putting it at the end. Where's Sauron? I have a list of 4 candidates here who I think all had like scenes that were like, that's sus. I'm gonna start with the least likely. Celebrimbor. Every time he opens his mouth, I'm like, what are you doing?
No way.
Like,
Ain't no way.
Because, dude, every time Elrond is like, he has to make a decision that could possibly lead to like instability amongst their people. Celebrimbor's like, hey, I'm here. By the way, heard you had to make a tough choice that might cause conflict. By the way, here's a story about your dad about exactly why you should make the choice that could possibly cause conflict. Anyways, I'm gonna go now, but like, good to see you. I'm in the show again, just in case anybody forgot. I'm here to force you to push you towards making decisions that, while they are going well, could very well have not gone well. Which is, I don't think it's actually sus. I just think he's a weird character, and I don't know if I like the way they're handling him.
Yeah, I don't really like Celebrimbor, but like, yeah.
I know it can't be him, but he's just so weird. Why is he being so weird?
He's just a scheming bastard. I don't know how else to put it. Like,
I guess
he very much wants to be held in regard and the same as Feanor, the dude who makes the Silmarils, and he will do what he needs to do to get it. We already seen, and the whole, I tried to get him to let you in on it from the very beginning. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, dude.
Yeah, I don't know. I had to bring up Celebrimbor being fucking sus as shit.
Yeah, 100%, 1,000%, he is not Sauron.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring up characters in ranking. I don't know. Do you want to pick what character we talk about? Because I've got 3. I've got Halbrand, Adar, and the Stranger. I mean, which one do you want to? I have the most notes about Halbrand and Sauron.
I would say let's talk about Halbrand first, because
Okay.
I think that he is the least likely to
Really?
be Sauron. Yes.
I think okay, so I have Halbrand. I have a ton written down, even though I don't think he's going to be Sauron. I think what they're setting up is it's kind of it, it's almost I think it's the best story if he's Sauron. Uh, just in terms of stuff they showed, the forging scene was like cool, obviously, but also like every time we see him with the forge, we're like, oh, you know, him being really skilled with the sword is cool. I think him talking to Galadriel about like the evil things, you don't know the evil things I've done. Like, well, it could very easily just be that he was an asshole. I think also would work with that. But what I really think is interesting is Gil-galad talks about how the tree started to get fucked up when Galadriel came back, or right before Galadriel came back from being mutinied. And I am wondering if that was because that was the beginning of a sequence of events that would lead to Sauron coming back. So let's say she comes back, Gil-galad sends her to Valinor, and she's not going to do that, right? Like, if he had let her stay and do her thing, like, maybe this wouldn't be happening. But
she wouldn't be out on the water, yeah.
Because she goes out onto the water, she runs into Halbrand, and she goes with Halbrand to Numenor, and she encourages Halbrand, who is like, no, I'm done with what I've done. Like, I just want to be out of this. Like, I really, like, I really don't want to be a part of this. But she keeps dragging him in and dragging him in and dragging him in. And I almost think this would kind of justify a little bit of Gil-galad's, like, what he was saying about Galadriel, which I think he kind of needs a little bit of justification, because I feel like he's just coming across as an asshole right now. But if he's right that like Galadriel is the one that kind of drags Sauron back and drags him back to Middle Earth, and I think people might get mad at that because it would kind of imply that this is all Galadriel's fault. But I think narratively, like, you can follow the steps of that would connect to the tree thing, and Halbrand is sus, and like it's a kind of a cool story of him being conflicted but then being pulled back into it and making it Galadriel's fault and giving her something to like her big effort to stop Sauron is what made him rise again, is like a kind of interesting storyline. But I don't know. It sounds like you're dead set against it. You don't think it's happening.
So this is something that I said like immediately after we seen that episode, is that I think that it is a double meaning where, there's the whole line, the wind that is trying to snuff out the ember could be the same one to spread it. And I think that it's a double meaning where it's like, Galadriel is the one who's trying to snuff it out and spreads it. And the same thing with Gil-galad trying to snuff her out, ends up spreading it, right? To me, okay, so like let's say what you said is true, right? Where he is Sauron. So okay, you're telling me Sauron he's taken over Mordor just fine, right? He's taken over the Southlands to the point where whole cities are falling, the trees, the animals are fleeing. It's becoming pretty lifeless already. All they need is to find this key or something, right? Even minus the Adar stuff, right? Let's like not even say the whole key thing, right? Like evil
I was gonna say all that stuff could be kind of being caused by Adar.
Right. Like, so what I'm saying is like, in general, evil is spreading in the Southlands, right? Regardless of if it's him or Adar, right? So he then takes the form of a man and then goes out on a boat and then becomes stranded, right? Even if you were to say that it was like a plot, like he knew the whole thing with Galadriel was gonna happen, which is like, to me, that's like no way. Like that is the most contrived thing.
No, I think if it's anything, it's that he was actually trying to get away from it, and Galadriel pulls him back in.
Like saying like, oh, I don't want to be evil anymore, or something.
Like
right?
I think that would be an interesting thing to do with a character that needs to be a villain for like 5 seasons, so he can't be boring. So you need to add a little bit
That
of
that is
conflict there.
that is literally why I think Adar is Sauron, but we'll get into that
Okay.
later. So let's say he is, and let's say he didn't even get into a like they got attacked by a sea serpent or something, right? Like he goes to Numenor and just becomes a commoner and just builds stuff. Like, to me, that is like so undark Lord. And even if it is to, like, he ends up, I think a very similar thing ends up happening that will end up happening anyways. So I don't know. I think that it would be weird for him to be Sauron. To me, it more screams that he's going to become a Nazgul.
Oh, I absolutely think that if he's not Sauron, he's a Nazgul. No matter what it is, this dude's fucked.
Yeah, I think he becomes a Nazgul. I think what ends up happening is he ends up in some way or fashion either becomes a king or gets the taste of power or something, and he ends up getting a ring, and he ends up becoming a Nazgul or something, right? Or maybe he even gets captured or something, and it kind of seems more like a forceful turn rather than just like his greed or pride or something being his fall. We've seen like so many things of him just being like evil or alluding to evil or just having a lot of anger, or him like literally being from the Southland, literally being an heir. Because I think it's at this point pretty confirmed that he is an heir, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It could be like a switch up with the writers wanting us to believe it because he isn't denying it anymore, and they're calling him Lord Halbrand. But to me, it's like there's no way that some commoner has that level of skill of crafting, that level of skill of fighting. There's no way like a random Southlander is going to have these skills to me. And not only that, like let's say you don't even like these physical things aside, the skills in diplomacy and learning to outsmart whoever he's talking to. Like, there's just no way that a random Southlander is just the complete package, bro. There's no way. So I think he is the heir at this point. It's pretty much confirmed. If he is the heir, then like he's not Sauron.
Yeah, he can't be Sauron if he's the heir.
And the heir, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me, I think that wraps him up pretty much.
Being the heir isn't really talking about the heir to the Southlands, but the heir to Morgoth.
Oh shit!
And the darkness.
No, but what I do think, like, they point to so many things. It's actually something that they do a couple times with Halbrand, where there is something, and it was literally what sparked people thinking that maybe he was Sauron, right? With, you see something that is evil, like the serpent, and then it turns out to be Halbrand on the ship.
Yeah, yeah.
There's the scene with Muriel doing the speech at the end of last episode where she's saying, is like I can't remember exact quote, but like, oh yeah, is it already among us, like the evil or whatever, right? And then it shows him when he's walking free and not in the cell, and then just his own evilness, and then like him saying, or like rage, I should say, not evilness, his rage that they showed. Then also when he was saying, you don't know what I've done, like you guys will all turn against me once you know what I did to even get here, right? And to me, it just screams, yeah, he did do what they did. He turned all his people in, he surrendered in order to just get away with his own life, right? Like maybe a similar thing happened where somebody was sent to where they were holed up at, right? Like some other tower or some other place, right? And they sent a message, hey, if you guys all swear fealty, yeah, y'all are going to be under the foot of some orcs, and you're going to be some slaves. It's going to be terrible, but you'll be alive at least, right? Like it's like a very evil thing, right? And then he just dips. He probably just ditches in the middle of the night or something, or he literally bargains, which to me, I don't think that would work that way. But maybe they're saying a similar thing happened where he had to kill a kid or something in order to seal the deal or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that specifically happening is just for that. I don't think Adar has been out anywhere except for this, which we'll get into later.
Well, let's
I guess
talk
we can get
about
into it now if you want.
let's talk about Adar, because for me Adar is the least likely choice. I think Adar.
I can get why you feel that way. Yeah.
I think because I think there's one scene where I think where you fall on is Adar Sauron depends on how you read one scene, which is when Waldrick goes, "You are Sauron, aren't you?" And then Adar fucking, choke slams the shit out of him. I think I read that as Adar being, I don't think he likes Sauron. I think Adar hates Sauron. I think he doesn't want to be compared. I think he's an elf that like got fucked up during the war with Morgoth, and he maybe found some sort of solace with the orcs, and he's trying to be like fatherly to them, and he's trying to give them their own place. He's been corrupted in some way, but I don't think the season 1 villain is going to be Sauron. That's the major thing, is I really think they want some sort of surprise where you're like, oh shit, that was Sauron. Like even if it's obvious in terms of them like Halbrand, they kind of are really signaling hard towards it. I think as soon as somebody goes, "You are Sauron, aren't you?" It's not them. Like, because now the audience has been told that somebody thinks that person is Sauron, so I think that takes them out of the running. For me, I really don't think it's Adar.
I think, to me, what it symbolizes, I get where you're coming from, and I think that is the main thing that makes me believe that he isn't. Like, I can agree with that. But I think at the same time, like, in the same way that you were saying, I think in order to have a villain who is not boring, you need to make it so that he is conflicted in what he is doing. You don't need to, but it is a way that you can do it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what's happening in the scene with him.
With Adar.
With him holding the orc's arm, saying, I wish you could feel it as I do. Like, Sauron is not his actual name. His name is Myron.
Yeah. And
so he is a Maiar. He's like considered like the mightiest one of Aule, right? The smith, the same dude who made the dwarves, right? And he's considered to be like the most powerful one, right? And so for him to have I think it's a symbolic to be. It's not exactly how it actually works, but Aule makes the dwarves, right? It's a craftsmanship. He literally made them, right? And with the orcs calling him father in Elvish, to me, in his eyes, in the same way Aule made the dwarves, I made the orcs, which isn't like really what happened, but it's like how he views himself, how he views that being like that. So he feels like he's on his ascent to becoming a god, right? And that's why he's saying, oh yeah, I'm not yet, right? And I think that he is conflicted in being full Dark Lord. Like he's looking out at the sun and he's like, yeah, like when it goes away, I will be forgetting the part of me that will remember its warmth. Like it is, I'm just full dark mode. Like it's just evil hours all day,
Yeah.
I'm on demon time, like everyone says demon time is like, late at night. Yeah, it's going to be night permanently in Mordor. So it's permanent demon time, So that's what I think. I think the scene where he's like, "You are Sauron, aren't you?" I think because he's been called, like, Sauron is like a name that he's given by the elves because he is so
evil,
self-centered. He has a different name called Gorthaur, meaning dreadful abomination.
Oh, cool.
And then the Eldar call him so those are the Sindar elves. The Eldar call him Sauron, meaning the abhorred, the abominable, the abomination, right? It's a mockery of his original name, right? So basically saying, and I feel like that is very like a parallel to, like, I don't know, like the Phantom of the Opera or something. Like he's scarred And so he's abhorrent. He
and he hates
looks,
being called by that name.
he's an abomination, right? Yeah. So he hates being called Sauron because he's had this period of time where, yeah, he did serve a Dark Lord, right? But at this point, he's been so secluded for thousands of years, or at least that's how long it should have been. It's at least been centuries, right? Because that's what they say, how long Galadriel's been looking for him. But he's had hundreds of years at least to just have this relationship with the orcs and not necessarily be doing anything fully evil, right? And so he's like, in the first age, he kind of just has like a little bit of power, right? Like he's not really cited as being in any of the major wars or whatever. He ends up fighting Beren and Luthien and capturing him and capturing Galadriel's brother, Finrod, who ends up dying in there, saving Beren, right? But he doesn't really like do anything like evil, right?
Okay, it's not until like after.
Definitely a bad guy. He's a shapeshifter. He turns into a werewolf. He's called like the Lord of the Werewolves and stuff.
But he doesn't cement himself as like Dark Lord of Evil until after Morgoth is already gone.
Right. He's more of like an interrogator. He kind of just more does like the bidding of him, and then after that, like after he gets beat, Sauron like tries to repent. And I know I said this earlier on the podcast before, but he tries to repent. He really does. And it is written in a way that it seems like that is truly what he's going to do, right? But it's Eonwë who's like, hey, like, even though like you're pleading for mercy, you need to go back to Valinor for judgment, right? And he's like, no, like I'm not gonna do that. Then I flee, right? Like I don't want to be condemned. Like the humiliation will be too much, right? Yeah. And then over the hundreds of years, then he ends up, building Barad-dûr and Mount Doom and all the stuff that we'll end up seeing. Yeah. But to me, that this is him choosing now. Finally, I will let go of that part of me. I'm going to now become evil. Like I'm just gonna do what I gotta do.
I could see that being the case. I think the only thing that kind of makes me struggle with that idea is I could see them choosing to tell that story. I don't know if that's super effective if we haven't seen the stuff before. Like I think they're
like the first age stuff that I was saying.
Yeah. Or even like let me put him repent or attempt his repentance, kind of starting from where he's making the decision to be bad is kind of a little shaky to me. Like just in terms not of like whether it could happen, but how much I'd enjoy that.
Let me put it in this way, right? So let's say you're Adar and you are Sauron, right? You are an inch away from claiming the Keyblade, is what we're going to call it.
Yeah.
And unlocking Kingdom Hearts. I mean, the Mount Doom or whatever, right? It's the key. And you're this close. And you're saying, hey, if you guys bow down to me, I won't kill you. Otherwise, I'll kill you all, right?
Yeah.
And then the people that are coming that you are going to spare, right? Allegedly, going to spare and just enslave, comes to you and says, we will serve you. Great abomination. No, you're not going to be like, what the fuck did you call me? Right?
I definitely get that point. I think it's more the part that I struggle against is just the idea of us meeting this conflicted villain after they've gotten past the conflict and are about to make the choice of evil. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, the way you describe it, it doesn't sound like he's conflicted to me. It sounds like he was conflicted and he no longer is.
That's what I'm saying. I think that this is him choosing to not be conflicted anymore. But then still, when someone calls you an abomination and you haven't heard the name, like other people would have called him Sauron back in like the first age when he's like evil or whatever. But like to be called an abomination or whatever for the first time in hundreds of years and being like, well, who are you to even say my name or to even call me an abomination when you're a filthy sewer rat that I'm letting serve me or whatever, right? Like, I could see it being from that angle, and that's what I think it actually is.
Yeah, I guess my thing is just I don't know how compelling a villain to me is if like they were previously conflicted, but we never got to see that conflict. I guess maybe they could flash back to it, or they could like have him express that he was once conflicted later on. But if he's already like, this is the choice I'm making, like I'm not really conflicted anymore because I've decided on this choice, and that's where we start with the character. I don't know how compelling that is to me.
I guess it's more. I guess it's less like conflicted about being evil, as it is conflicting about letting go of the good stuff, right? Because to me, he's been kind of having best of both worlds, where he's having these orcs serve him, and he's secluded, and there's no one above him, right? But he's not on the level he wants to be because the orcs aren't as strong, because they don't have a place where they can thrive. Like, they're just he's a dark lord, like down in some tunnels with some rags over top of it, right? Like, that's not dark lord status, right?
No.
So to me, it's like he has his ambitions. It's just in order to achieve the ambitions, he has to block out the sun. He has to never see that shit anymore. He has to do all of these things. I think it's more just the little things that he is having to cut out. I think it's more of that angle, not necessarily whether or not I'm going to be completely evil. I think it's more just, okay, now I have to let go of these little things, you know?
I think that could work. It'll depend on how they execute it. I do want to move on to the last, because we've been going for a while. I do want to move on to the last person on the list, and I want to hear your thoughts on the stranger first, and then I'll share mine.
I don't think it can be the stranger, for a number of reasons. So this is just based off of like what I know of the canon, right? So it looks like the meteor comes from like Valinor, right? So,
but he would not be in.
He wouldn't be there.
No,
that would be breaking that lore.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say you did break that lore. Okay.
And that wouldn't make sense because the Southlands are already corrupted. I guess
they're already
Adar, you know.
Right. If you're saying Adar isn't Sauron, right? Because this is under those assumptions. He is paving the way for Sauron, let's say, right? In this scenario where he is. So he has to have gone back to Valinor, whether it's forcefully or on purpose, and then being cast out or sending himself out. Okay, well then why do you have to be in a meteor? That's a bit weird. Well, also we've confirmed is that the meteor flying past Linden and then the leaf falling, those things are not parallel. The parallel is Galadriel seeing the meteor and then also seeing the knife and choosing not to go, right? The blight was happening, like Gil-galad reveals that the blight on the tree was happening before Galadriel even returned from like, the trip in the ice, right? Yeah. So it's a bit different in that way, right? And I think what really does hammer that, I feel like they failed to hammer that home, or what they failed to hammer home in that is that apparently Galadriel had so many people with her, and then she comes back with only a small troop of like 5 or 6 dudes. Like, she gets all these people killed, right? Yeah. I feel like that was something that I feel like they don't really touch on or really hammer home. That's like, that is why the tree is wilting, and they think, okay, you know, she's this like bloodthirsty person, let's send her back, right? It wasn't the meteor. So, okay, if he was sent back or brought back or whatever, is he fleeing? Is he being cast out of Valinor? Okay, well then if that does happen, why is he in the form of an old man if he's a Dark Lord? Why does he not have his memories? Why is he speaking in what I would assume is Elvish and not Black speech, right? Because Black speech is a thing. There is a part in the ice scene where at the end it does kind of feel Black speechy, but I feel like it's more just the intonation of how he says it, right? Like, it's less what he's saying, it's more how he says it that makes it feel more evil or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he is just there to make you feel like, oh, maybe it isn't Adar,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is a lot of things that do point to him being it, but I think the stuff with Adar, it just is more compelling to me. Plus, there's a line that I didn't read that is literally in the trivia that I actually I told to you yesterday when we
Yeah.
decided, hey, we can't record today. Is that Adar's? This is a quote from the trivia on the show on the player when you like hover your mouse over it. So Adar's tolerance of the sun hints that he is not an orc. Okay, to me that's a bit like, well, duh.
Yeah.
Or not completely. He seems to possess some of the gifts of the elves, immortality, and the ability to stand in daylight without distress. His children, the orcs, avoid its painful glares for using sun cloaks, or by using sun cloaks to keep the rays off their skin. So that is a quote of trivia that they have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that he's not an orc, and they're saying he possesses some of the gifts of the elves. So they're saying he's not an orc and he's not an elf. In like, that's how I read it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's like, okay, then he has to be a Maiar at that point, right? He's got
Mm-hmm.
pointed at ears. They're calling him father. All this stuff. The glove that he wears, it makes me feel like he is, right? So with that, I feel like it's more. And we didn't talk about the cultist scene where the cultists show up to where the meteor landed, and
Yeah.
they show the scene again where he landed there, and it's like a ring of fire, and it feels very much like the Eye of Sauron, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I always thought that was very much like screamed Sauron to me. But I think that it's more, they had on the thing we were calling the toilet seat that one of the cultists have. It has the symbol of the star, which he wrote in the ground that he was looking for, and that was also on that page, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was more that the cultists, what they look like to me is that it looks like they're more searching for somebody that they don't like or that they fear or hate. It doesn't look like they're looking for somebody that they're like, to me it feels like they're even if they weren't up on a cliff looking down on it, I would still feel like they were looking down on it with disdain, you know?
Uh-huh.
It to me it feels like it's more we need to find who this is to stop them, which makes me more lead to believe that he isn't Sauron, right?
Yeah.
In an even bigger sense, this is something that I said to Swarls and that I said to Sean a couple episodes ago when we were watching it together. There is simply no way that you take what the meaning of the hobbits are in The Lord of the Rings
And
even
change
the
it.
smallest person can make a great impact on the world. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have any qualifications. You don't have to have any skills. You don't have to have anything. You just have to have the heart and the courage to do the right thing. And that even those small things can be enough to change the course of the world, right? Like, it's a very powerful feeling. You can't then take and invoke hobbits with the Harfoots. They're not hobbits, but you're invoking them clearly. And then say that the actions of the Harfoots, even if they are good and meaning to be good, in the same way that the hobbits are, they don't have any skills, they're small, they're not fast, they're not strong, they're fearful, all this stuff, that even in their fear, or even the good things they do and the bad things they do, lead to a calamity that is Sauron. Like, there is simply no way. And then you can't even tell me on the other side that it's like, oh, you know, the goodness in Nori's heart and stuff and how they treat him, it changes his mind for a little bit. I don't like that either. Both of those feel terribly wrong to me. There is just simply no way that they try to say that the reason Sauron survives when he gets sent down, because that dude looks like he is dying.
Yeah.
And the main thing is that she is nursing him back to health. Like, even if you say like, oh, Sauron would die and then get like resurrected by the cultists or something, because that is a thing. Like he's a Maiar. Even when his body dies, he doesn't fully die, right? Like you see that very much with like the
With
One
Gandalf.
Ring and blah blah blah, and with Gandalf, all that stuff, right? He's a Maiar, so he can't really die. To me, it's like even if you said the cultists were going to res him or whatever, and that they were preparing his return, which is like the cultists are not something that have been set up in any way. Like this is like the first time we're really even seeing them, right? Besides the trailers. I think that it's, and I honestly literally just had this thought, right? So the cultists are looking for him in order to stop him, right? They can't find him. What do? They go and they do the thing that we've seen in the trailer where they wake up the Balrog. Because what do you need to fight a Maiar? Another Maiar.
Yeah.
Balrogs are also Maiar. They're corrupted Maiar, right? So that's what it feels like to me. I don't know. It's like maybe they think, okay, the good. I will be incredibly surprised if they just retcon like Durin's Bane being like, if he is Gandalf, right? Let's say the mysterious man is Gandalf. If they retcon the fight to be in the second the "You Shall Not Pass" type scene where he fights the Balrog,
yeah, I don't think anyway. I don't think
there's no way. No. But I do think that it's like okay, well, there's a good Maiar here now. Okay, well we know where one is, an evil one is. We're gonna go wake him up to turn the tides, right? Yeah. And it's just gonna take longer for the mysterious man to become who he's supposed to be, and then that's why, evil gets the upper hand.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Although, I will say, that dude looks evil in that last scene, dude.
He does.
He looks like he has an evil smile. He's like, whatever he's chanting, it seems very, like it's very under his breath. It's very, it still feels very flowing, like Elvish, right? But then, like when his voice gets really evil, like at the end, dude, like it very much, dude. It very much feels evil. But honestly, bro, Nori's trolling. Why are you grabbing his arm, dude? It's literally becoming frozen. Like I guess she wants to help him, but why would you grab where the ice is spreading? Like that seems so stupid. But also her running away after being blasted away doesn't feel super in character, right? Because she feels like she's always been very, very outgoing. But at the same time, she did get half her hand frozen and then blasted like 10 feet away. So I can't really blame her.
But, understandably shook.
Yeah. I like that I think he's going to be good. But I do like that it's not just so black and white, that it's like there's a gray area. It's like, oh, he could be a force for good or he could be a force for evil. And based on whoever finds him first, that's what he's going to do. I don't know. You could tell me maybe, okay, let's say it's a blue wizard and not Gandalf or something, right? Well, actually, it would even make more sense with with what Gandalf says about, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. If you were to tell me that the people who nursed him and helped him become good at the beginning were small people, right? That would line up to me. And the idea that the cultists wanted to find him in order to corrupt him or something at the beginning, I could see that too. But yeah, what do you think?
Oh, I don't think for a second that he's Sauron. I maybe naively of my own hopes and dreams don't think he's Gandalf. I think he's a blue wizard. I will continue to think he's a blue wizard. I think that the cultists are after him because my true theory, we haven't seen Sauron yet. I think Sauron is somebody else, hasn't been in the show yet. I can see that as well. Cultists were sent by Sauron. I think I think if we had seen the cultists with Adar at some point, I would jump fully fledged onto the Adar train being Sauron. But I think Sauron is somewhere else and has sent these cultists to deal with the new Maiar that just showed up and could get in his way. And I think that get him while he's weak and while he doesn't know what's going on, go deal with him real quick. And I think that is why they show up so late. because Sauron is like, oh fuck, when the meteor comes, Sauron's like, oh fuck, they sent another Maiar, like, or they sent a Maiar. We gotta fucking deal with this. Like, go find out where that lands and go to it right now. And he sent them, and that's why they show up late.
Yeah,
but I don't think he's Sauron, and I think that it would. I think maybe we haven't even seen Sauron yet, and that Sauron is somewhere else and sent the cultists to find our stranger, Blue Wizard. Hopefully not Gandalf.
I guess we would also be remiss to not say whether or not we think Slim Shady is Sauron, because that
not
was
for a second. Also,
that was the running thing that people were saying and assuming with the trailers.
Everybody was like, "Oh, maybe it's this guy, maybe it's this guy," and I was like, "It's not that guy, it's not that guy." And then I watched the episode, and I was like, "It's not that girl. That's a woman."
That cultist? You think
that cultist? No, I looked it up.
Okay.
I looked up who plays her. It's an actress.
Okay.
I was because at first when you just see the face, it's like, okay, it kind of looks like an Eminem or whatever, and then when you see the full body, it looked more like a woman to me, and so I looked it up, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, it's a woman. So all three of them are women.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, that is.
But I think Stranger's Blue Wizard still, and I think that Sauron hasn't been seen probably, and that he sent the cultists to go deal with the problem of a new Maiar showing up on Middle Earth.
Yeah, I think I can get behind that too, where it's like, yeah, maybe he's somebody who has not been shown. Maybe he's down in the rat tunnels still or something, or he's manipulating people from behind the scenes, you know? Yeah, that would be a very Sauron thing where he's not really off doing anything. But to me, I don't know. I feel like that kind of takes the wind out of the sails of, like, the Second Age is supposed to be like Sauron's age. Like, he's supposed to get shit done.
I think we're definitely gonna see him by the end of this season. I think
there's no way we don't know who it is by the end of this.
I think that. I think there's a possibility that season 2 is a lot more low-key, and that we get more into like some kind of politics stuff. Like, we have a really explosive first season, and then we get into some kind of Numenorian politics, and like Sauron starts to like manipulate people now that we've been revealed to him, and we kind of slow down for a while.
I could see that
after season 1.
Yeah, I could see that. Or maybe ending with a big conflict. I could see that as well. Where like most of it isn't, and then there's one at the very end. I could see that too.
Well, with all that said, easily our longest episode yet. It's 2:30. I don't know if I'm going to be able to edit this tonight. I'm going to start on it at least, but it might be a little bit later than you guys have heard this. I'm sorry, but I hope that it being an extra double stuff Oreo episode makes up for the fact that it's late.
We popped off.
We popped the fuck off.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end here on this very, very long episode. Thank you guys so much. And thanks to everybody that's been coming into the Discord. I know we said Discord 5 billion times, but you can join and come talk to us about Second Breakfast stuff and Rings of Power stuff. Come in and say nice things like, hey, I really like this episode. You guys popped off. That would be really nice. You can find and talk to me live on air on our Twitch at Super SpikeGhetti Bros on twitch.tv. Also check out our YouTube where we have, all of our other podcasts, Super SpikeGhetti Bros, and on Twitter, SpikeGhetti Bros. And that's where you can find all of the things that we do.
You guys can follow me on Twitter at Sean_AFK. You guys have to go drop a follow for Alex on Twitter, who made our juiced cover art, which is what I was trying to say before I slipped all over the place. At ALX_BigBoy. There's a link in the episode description. And our awesome intro music and outro music too. It's at the end as well. Was made by Shane and Jesse from Meadow Vista Media at MVM_studio on Twitter. Shane, also known as Fabio the Iguana. You can follow him on Twitter as well at Fabio the Iguana. All these links are in the episode description. Oh, and they also have a website, meadowvistamedia.com.
All right, guys. Thank you so much again. I hope you guys have a great day. Enjoy your 11Cs, your luncheon, your dinner, and your supper. And we'll see you next week for Second Breakfast.